Hit a couple more in the U.S., and the one that I want to talk about is Red Tape, which talks about trade deals. It also talks about the sort of ridiculousness of Homeland Security and how there's actually a Homeland Security employee who is like a bra inspector, and you'd think that oh that's a T-shirt you see at a frat party, but no, it's actually not. It's actually well, it is, but it's also someone you find in Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about Red Tape.
Well, the problem, of course, I mean, the idea of the book is that it's structured around sort of the consumer's experience of the fashion industry today, right? So it begins with your first understanding of what fast fashion may be, which is sort of, a quick historical overview, introduction to the term, but then really starts with the models, who are the ones that who you see wearing fast fashion the second you learn that such a thing exists, and then goes to the stores and then sort of traces the production line back all the way until you get to, of course, the policy that makes it all happen. And again, this was a strip by Melissa Mendes, and she starts that strip, I believe it's the third panel, with a picture of Bruce Springsteen's rear, right?
Yep.
Which ends up being incredibly important because Bruce Springsteen, deeply embedded in American culture, and the jeans are made of cotton. And while cotton, yes, often is still sort of something that comes out of the U.S., the international policies that dictate the way the garment trade works means that sometimes that cotton gets shipped to like 50 or 60 different places around the world before it's milled into jeans that are then brought back to the United States, and then the Made in the USA logo is slapped back on them. And so these policies are very complicated, and they're big, and they're, according at least to industry researchers who've looked at the policy in sort of physical stacks in ways that I haven't had access to yet, they claim that the garment industry is dictated by a much higher stack of papers than any of the other manufacturing industries in the U.S. And I totally believe it, because these are all, formerly organic processes that we're trying to sort of loop through all these different systems around the world. And what we end up learning is that also means that they're regulated in just billions and billions of tiny ways that you would never imagine in the world. And so, excuse me, why there is an inspector of the wire gauge of a brassiere on the Department of Homeland Security payroll is that it's considered an intellectual property violation if the gauge of wire is not the one that it was reported to be when you claimed that you were going to be sending the bras to the United States to be, sold and distributed. And so then we get into intellectual property rights laws, and there is like a whole second book that could be written about supposed ties between terrorism and intellectual property rights, because in the logic then of both the Department of Homeland Security, of course, but also the manufacturing ethos of the United States, any intellectual property rights violation is done to raise money to commit terrorism against the United States.
Obviously.
Yeah. And so, this same logic then becomes the reason why we distrust independent garment manufacturing from, say, Cambodia, right? Because they're not adhering to these same sets of policies. And so the implications of this, that individuals creating clothes are necessarily doing so for evil purposes, and therefore we have to buy only from Walmart and H&M, are equally mind-boggling to something like the foreign trade zone situation, where you're just like, that's not real. That doesn't make any sense.
And yet it is real. I mean, like, it shouldn't be real, but it's absurd, and yet it's right there.
There it is. Which is why comics end up being kind of the funnest way to actually talk about these things, right? Because you can be like, hey, Bruce Springsteen's butt and this guy on the Department of Homeland Security in a pile of bras. Like, it's a joke. It's also true.
Yeah.